Now this is a documentation on constraints. And we've been looking at different modifiers here that perhaps deform the mesh. Um, yeah, I think most of these deform it, simulate it, generate, and so forth. Constraints doesn't necessarily deform it, um, but restrain it. So it constrains it from doing something. And we looked a little bit at this last time. We're going to be looking at specifically bone constraints. There's lots you can do with these, and we'll just briefly go through these so you see each one. So again, they control an object's properties: location, rotation, scale. So don't necessarily deform it. And you got the little pulley there. That's this right here. They also have one that looks like this, has a little bone with a circle around it, I think. This is the bone constraint. So this is our regular constraint, and then this is our bone constraint. And talk about how you can have these work in combination with each other to form a constraint stack. Part of this is if you set up your constraints, if you set up your bone constraints, you can set up your figure such that when you animate it, you don't have to work as hard to make sure it looks perfect. For example, if my arm doesn't go back, doesn't bend. There you go. My arm doesn't bend down like that. If it did, my arm would be broke. That's a constraint. Um, my arm can only go that; it can't go 360 degrees around. So again, that's a constraint. With our armature that we've already added, there is no restraining it. You can spin it around however you want, and so you can get unrealistic views and appearances. We already took a look at adding a constraint last time, and like I said, we could spend a huge amount of time on covering every one of these with examples, which we're going to briefly mention them. This copies constraints to the selected, so it's a way of copying it. Here's how you clear your constraints. Now track, these tools add a tracking constraint to the select object. Targeted object, the constraint will be the active object, which won't have a constraint added. Remember that model I brought up? Um, where we had we had Blender with Ludwig, and then we had the face in front, and you can move those little items, and it would cause the eyes to go or the lips to go up, and so on and so forth. Well, that's all done with constraints. I wonder if I can find that. Well, it can be done with constraints, I should say. Well, where did I download it the other day? There it is. See how I move that? How the eyes are following that? Okay. I want to get into the, not talking about the constraints track. What they're talking about there is if I come over here, that out of the way, and come down here to my constraints, I add object constraint. I don't really have anything to clamp it to, but so I got one there. Add object constraint, stretch to. You see, you have a stack of them. So that's what they're talking about. And how to manipulate that. Now, it's talking about target. We've already seen that. Okay, I guess that's motion tracking. Let's look at the camera. Camera solver constraint gives the owner of the constraint the location rotation of the solved camera motion. Solved camera motion is where Blender reconstructs the position of the physical real world camera when it filmed video footage relative to the thing being tracked. And we're not going to go through that. I'm just giving you an overview. Object solver gives the owner of this constraint the location rotation of the solved object motion. Is where the solved object motion is where Blender thinks physical real world was relative to the camera filmed it. It can be used to add a mesh to video, for example. And by follow track constraint, by default, the follow track constraint is making objects have the same position at a frame as the track has, and motion of this object happens on a single plane defined by the camera in the original position of the object. He's talking about copying those, maintain volume. Tracking to is probably the more interesting one, though we did look at that already. Action constraint is powerful, allows you to control an action using transformations of another object. The underlying idea of the action constraint is very similar to ones behind drivers, except for the former uses a whole action. Multiple F curves, the same type of ladder controls a single F curve of their own. Example, define an object action. It can be assigned to any object or even no object at all. Have mapped it on your owner through an action constraint so that moving the target in the 0 to 2 range along its x-axis maps action content on owner in the 0 to 100 frame range. This means when the target X property is 0, the owner will be as if in a frame 0 with link action. And targets X property 1, the owner will be as if it's at frame 50. If I don't have any examples here. Oh, here's one. I need to share the reshare. Share the computer sound. Seems like I figured out how to do volume myself. That's curious. Do you have any volume on your side? Let's see, settings. Anyway, I guess no volume on that. Yeah, I'm gonna not show that since the volume is missing. Armature constraint. Part of this is setting up your how do they interact with each other. Instead of using the weights, you could use envelopes. What else is interesting here? It's a constraint version of the armature modifier, exactly reproducing the weight blended bone transformations, applying it to its owner orientation, as it can be used like a variant of the child of. Child of is a constraint version of the standard parent-children relationship between objects. The one can establish through control P in the 3D views. Now I can look at these and I can see the purpose of them, but I can't really see where you'd use it, and it's where it'd be beneficial in a blender model you're developing. If you got a child of, the child of will inherit items from the parent, the constraints. I suppose if you had all your bones, I don't know. I'd have to watch a YouTube video to see the actual purpose. I think follow path makes it go along a particular curve. Shrink wrap. I think I've ever use that. And if I could get sound to play on this, then I would show it. Okay. Main purpose here is just showing you where all this is located at. And just briefly talking about those. Now let's talk about the bone constraint. Okay, make sure I'm starting out for new. I'm gonna do a SX, change scale along the x-axis. Go into edit. I'm gonna do my loop cut. Okay, got some loop cuts in there. Looks like they got some extra ones, but that's okay. Do an A to select them all, right click, choose subdivide. Okay, we should have plenty to work with there. I'm going to go back to object and choose my modifier, and I'm going to add a subdivision surface. And I'll go ahead and apply that, give it a little bit of a different look. Okay, so now if I went into edit, see I have lots of items to work with. Now I'm going to add an armature. Now I want to go to my running skeleton person, choose viewport display, and choose in front so I can see the bone. I want to choose my viewpoint, then I'll go to the front. And I'm going to do an R 90 degrees. So I'll put 90 and press enter. And that'll rotate it 90 degrees, so it's facing this way. I can do an SX to scale it along the x-axis. Okay, so I have my bone selected. I go into edit mode. This far tip is selected already, so I do an EX, extrude it along my x-axis. EX, EX, EX. Okay, so we got some bones, at least in this half. Go back to my object mode. Never can remember the order here, but it doesn't matter. It'll be obvious. If I have that selected and do my shift and hold and grab that. Now I'm going to do a control P. If you pop up with something with automatic weights, that means you did it in the right order. So if I had this selected, hold on my shift key, select this, do a control P. You don't see how you don't have object automatic weights. Okay, so select the mesh, select the bone, control P for parenting. With automatic weights. Now I referred to over in the Blender documentation with envelopes. So this is where you're using envelopes. But we'll use automatic weights. So now if I have the bone selected, I can go into pose mode. And if I select that, it moves that. Now, to reset different items, under pose here, there's a clear transform. And this would apply for whatever bone you have selected. If I wanted to apply to all the bones, you do an A to select everything. Go to pose, and you do your clear transform all. And that puts it back to the starting place there. Well, again, the issue on this is if I grab this bone, I can go too far. Maybe I want to restrict how much it goes. This bone here, now that I got it in the armature, we now have a bone with it looks like a circle around it. Actually, maybe that's a pulley system on the bone. Kind of looks like that. But if I choose that, there's an add bone constraint. And you see there's a lot of different options you can choose here. Made them same way: motion tracking, transform, tracking, relationship. See, there's a limit rotation, restrict rotation along each axis within given ranges. Now, in order to maybe understand a little bit better about where X, Y, and Z is, though I still have trouble even after I show it. If I go back to my little running skeleton and click axis, this will show you the what it's relating to. Okay, so go back to my bone constraints. You can select the individual ones here, like this. And I don't know why, but it just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. Whenever I come in here, I just have to play with it and see. See, if I got limit Z, and well, actually, if I try to do my, I'm in pose mode now. If I try to do an R for rotate, see, it goes like that. See limit Y. So there, I'm forcing it. If I try to do an R for rotate, doesn't behave like we think. If I limit X, oh, I'm forgetting something. Instead of world space, this should be local space. Okay, let's try it again. Now, if I try to limit to Y, it doesn't affect it there. If I limit to Z, now if I try to do a rotate, see, it doesn't move it. I guess I can see that. If that's Y going out here, and I think that's X going down, Z would be going this direction. So, like where I'm sitting to the other side of the monitor type of view. So now if I put 90 degrees in here. Now if I do an R for rotate, see how it stops at 90 degrees? It won't let me go any further. If I tried to go down, it won't let me go down. This would be if you're trying to put a constraint on a bone and you want it to stop at 90 degrees. If you want to go further, maybe you want it to go at 150 degrees. Maybe that's what's reasonable for an arm. If you do an R, it'll stop at 150 degrees, won't go any further. Does that make sense on those the limit rotation? Okay. So like I say, it just takes me a little while to get in here and play. Try doing the limits on these and see. It's also where you can lock these down. You see, there's the limit on the X. Let's see, where am I at? X. I think view from top. Okay, so I got a limit on the X. Do an R for rotate. Assuming I'm thinking correctly, which way is the X? That is weird. It's limiting the rotation, but it's kind of turning it, isn't it? Yeah, put a 90 degrees. Okay, so I'm thinking about a wrong. Oh no, there's 90 degrees down. Can't go up. But that's just weird how it's twisting. There's probably one on here to cause it not to twist. Couldn't tell you which one. Um, anyway, that's the bone constraint. Now, what I'm going to have you do as an assignment on it is I want you to download a mesh from our Turbo Squid. The werewolf is a good one. Werewolf doesn't already have bones in it. Put bones in it, and then set up your bone constraints and what's reasonable. So you shouldn't be able to flip the leg up, 190 degrees, 210 degrees, and so forth. Okay. Let me go back to object. I'm going to select the bones here and I'll do a delete. I did an X for delete. And this changed a little bit for this, so I may have to refer to the video on this to see if I learned where they moved everything to and so forth. But if I go into edit mode, I have object selected and go into edit mode. Everything is selected. So if I do U, what we're going to take a look at now is how to draw on our object. We're going to be taking a look how to apply images to our objects. We're going to be taking a look how to do music. Um, One thing I have never done, I want to do it this semester, is put video inside of an animation. So you import a video, like an MP4 or something like that, and you have it playing on some kind of object. So we're going to take this now that we've looked at the armature, and we're going to be adding music to it and so forth. There's some pretty clever ones people do, adding some of those different elements. And I don't know if he has it on his site or where I found it. These are ones he's created or somebody's created. But we'll be taking a look at how to have our like a title screen on that. We'll be talking about how to put sound in, how to change the. I don't think that changed the coloring at all. Some of these might have the color. There, it looks like they changed the color of the hat. That first one is probably the better of all of them, I think. Okay. Let's say we do a U for UV mapping, and this is where you can map this to something you can draw on. So you see, there's a smart UV project, and he in the video I was watching to see the new changes, he recommends putting a 3 here for the island margin, and then you click OK. Now up here, if you choose the texture painting, you see you got your object over here. It's purple. Purple indicates there's no textures. Over here, this is under the tools, if it isn't already showing. You'll see there's a no textures, and if you click the plus here, you can choose the base color. And so you can have this as your base color. I don't know why, but he recommended change this 2048. I don't know if that's specifically for what he was looking at or just in general. And then click OK, and then gives it a color. Down here, you see we have our brush, and there's just a texture draw brush here. And you can choose a color down here. And if I hold down my left mouse button, then I can paint on it. Up here, you see some different options. It's also over here, but radius. This is how big your paintbrush is going to be. So if you just want to do writing on it, you can change that to 1. And then write something. Now after you get done, and you don't have to stick with the same color. If I choose blue, you can do that. We're going to see that you can also bring this out of you can bring it out of Blender. You can edit in Paint.net, where you have more tools available. Now, one thing I had trouble getting to work was this over here. In theory, you should be able to paint over here, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Used to be you had to do a new. And then what else did you have to do? I thought that was it. Just have to save it. But I have to refresh my memory. Oh, that is drawing. Well, my eyes are just bad. I guess you have to draw over here, though. It's applied automatically, though. See that being applied automatically. over here, if I go into edit mode and unselect those, yeah, I'll have to refresh my. It's changed from when I used it. But anyway, do all of your painting over here on your object. Now there is also a Vertex Paint. The texture paint is more powerful. Vertex Paint refers to the idea. Again, went to the tools here. That you can paint around the vertices. Well, that means that it's centered based upon your vertices, and you don't get the same effect as doing a UV mapping. So we're not going to worry about the Vertex Paint. That's all the paints. Weight paint is like with Armature. Vertex Paint, yeah. I'm trying to see how they changed this in a new version for the Vertex Paint. There it is. I just had to pick the color. And see how it's based upon where the vertex is? If I'm sitting here drawing right in the middle and it's not doing anything, that's because there's no vertices there. The other one is based upon your faces. It's like you're painting on the faces. Now you can go into this and you could do a subdivide, give myself vertices to work with. And now if I go to my Vertex Paint, choose a color. There I tried to draw a circle on it, but you see the issue there is it's not too good. Because again, it's based upon vertices, and it's just not as clean as the other one. Lots of different tools here: blur, average, smear. Texture paint is using a texture is kind of interesting. Um, might not look good on a vertex though. Change color. Yeah, I'm not sure how they changed that. The idea would be if when you're drawing, it's like a. You ever use a texturing in real painting? Like I got textured walls at home, and it's not just like a smooth wall. Somehow they when they paint it, they got a texture to it. So like parts of it are standing out more than others. Popcorn ceilings, where it's got the little popcorn in there. That's done differently, but that's like a texture. And so with the textures here, you can combine that with your painting. And instead of it just being a nice smooth color, you can have it. Well, let me see if I have a picture. I want a 22-minute one. I don't want texture. I want vertex, but with textures. Oh, well, this is the old version, so that's why I'm not. I was trying to see if they applied the texture, but it might take me a while to actually find one of those. Now, our character you're going to add the constraints to, I want you to paint it in some way. So paint a face on it. Like if I add a mesh, UV sphere, for example. And see, I have everything selected. Do a U, Smart UV project. But that is 3. No, I think it goes up to 1 as a maximum when you click off it. So I'm not sure why it says 3. Video watched. Click OK and choose my texture paint. You have to come over here and choose your base color. And green there. And texture draw here. We choose color goes with it. Now, when you render this, of course, you have to have your camera pointed to the right place. Um, let's see. Here's render image. Then that applies that. Now, after you've rendered your image, I don't think we've talked about this, but you can, let's see. There it is. Under image, you can save as, and it's PNG by default, I think, somewhere. Oh, there it is. File format. You can choose these other ones. bitmap even, but PNG is the best one to save it as. Give it a name here, and then your location, and save as image. We'll go to my documents. You'll have an image you could upload to Facebook, or you could do whatever with. If you like Blender real well, you could even use that to develop some game art. Um, develop some game art for a 2D game in Unity. I could probably create something a lot faster in. Let me show that. That might be kind of interesting. Discard changes. X, delete that. I'm going to add a mesh. UV sphere. So if I was going to create a Pac-Man, um, I'd have to change my camera. I'll handle that in a minute. But like here's your Pac-Man from the front. And open a new window and do this view. Okay, that's the front. And then do it from the side. Let's see. Front, bottom, right. Okay, so that's our right side there. So this is our front view. So come into edit mode, do a select none. Select the vertices here. X for delete, and see which one do I need to, what faces? I think faces. Probably not enough. I say it's not enough because you see how it's just a little piece missing here. And okay, so X, delete those, click delete faces. Still might not be enough. Faces. Okay, that'll probably be good enough. Now, this point, where am I at? Edit mode. Go back into object mode there. Do a view front. Okay, so we got that there. And if I went into edit mode here, grab these vertices, and I could have these assigned to a vertex group. So I've done a screen capture, assuming I point my camera to the side. I've done a screen capture of that. Now if I do a G for grab and move those down, I do a screen capture there, bring it up, screen capture, screen capture, screen capture. And then you'd have a bunch of JPEGs. Of course, I didn't do much effort into this, but you got a bunch of JPEGs. Probably an extrude would be better instead of moving them. If I did right here, did E for extrude. Right click, select all of them there. E for extrude. I thought I had them all selected. It's not. That's bizarre. Okay, let me do edge select. Okay, E for extrude. There, that gives me more of them. Okay, so now if I did G for grab, then I could have it move up and down. Now I was doing something flaky there because I didn't do a GZ. If I do a GZ, I can control it exactly. I thought doing the front view, I didn't think it'd go off on the side like that. Does that make sense? How you could use that to create your figures? But if you're trying to animate something in your in Unity 2D, and you're trying to create your own game art, Blender is one way you can do that. Now, if you're good at some of the tools like Photoshop, Paint.net, you could probably also create your own like that. Well, I'm gonna give you the rest of the time to work on the project. And again, the project is to rig a like where the werewolf or some other character, with your choice, doesn't already have bones. Put constraints on it and paint it to make it look a little bit more decent, more than just like graffiti, but try to make it look good in terms of painting. Questions on any of that? Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and put the project out there then. Like I say, you got the rest of time to work on that.